Let's jump right in. In this explainer, we're taking a journey far, far beyond the reach of sunlight, dropping way down into the midnight zone of our oceans. We're going to uncover the absolute awe-inspiring secrets of deep-sea gigantism. It's this wild world where the most hostile, punishing conditions on the entire planet don't actually destroy life. They somehow grow it into absolute giants. Okay, let's dive into this and see exactly how nature breaks literally all the rules in the dark.
Right off the bat, there's this core paradox that's been baffling scientists for over a century. I mean, think about it. Down past the midnight zone, the temperatures hover just a hair above freezing, and the pressure is literally bone-crushing. And even wilder, less than 1% of the food from the ocean's surface actually makes it down to the seafloor. There simply shouldn't be enough energy to build anything big, let alone gigantic. Yet, as we're about to see, the deep ocean consistently pumps out absolute titans.
So to understand what's going on, we have to look at Bergmann's rule. This goes all the way back to 1847. It basically tells us that animals in colder environments tend to have much larger bodies. A perfect example of this in action is the giant isopod. Specifically, there's this species called Bathynomos vaderi. And yes, it's named that because its helmet-shaped head genuinely looks exactly like Darth Vader. In the deep, freezing ocean, being a giant, armor-plated woodlouse the size of a literal soccer ball isn't some sort of biological excess. It's actually a brilliant, absolutely necessary survival strategy.
And that giant size brilliantly illustrates exactly why being huge is such a massive advantage when you've got almost no food. It's really all about the math of surface area to volume. Basically, the bigger you get, the more inside you have relative to your outside. This means a giant body holds onto heat way more efficiently than a small one, which lets the creature's metabolism just drop to almost zero. In fact, this mathematical trick is so incredibly effective that a captive giant isopod in a Japanese aquarium actually survived for 5 years and 43 days without eating a single meal. No way, right? It just simply wasn't hungry.
Now to see how this actually gets built, we really just need to look deep inside the DNA. Meet Alicella giantea. This is a massive deep-sea amphipod that grows to 34 centimeters long. That is roughly 50 times the size of its shallow water cousins. When scientists actually sequenced its DNA, they found a staggering 34 gigabase genetic blueprint. Its genome completely dwarfs its shallow water relatives. Its massive size is quite literally hard-coded into this gigantic blueprint long before it even starts to grow.
But here's the crucial point. It's all about how that giant genome actually behaves. Alicella gigantea exhibits something called indeterminate growth. By looking at its transcriptomes, which are basically just the genetic instructions currently being used by the animal, scientists discovered that its growth genes are actively being pushed by evolution. The genetic signal that says, hey, accumulate mass, just never shuts off. Now, up at the surface, a massive, slow-moving genome like this would be a complete liability against fast predators. But 7,000 meters down, where everything is slow and predators are super rare, it's the ultimate evolutionary advantage.
What's truly mind-blowing here is how cold water physically alters the basic building blocks of life. Let's look at the Antarctic sun starfish. This is a 60-centimeter absolute beast with 50 arms. Now in warm water, a cell builds mass and then it rapidly divides, which keeps the individual cells pretty small. But down in near freezing water, that whole chemistry changes. The cell keeps accumulating mass, but that signal to divide gets delayed. So by the time it finally splits, the cell itself is already massive. The freezing cold is literally building a larger animal from the inside out just by oversizing every single cell.
Okay, 4 meters. Just take a second and really picture that. That is the staggering leg span of the Japanese spider crab. It's the largest living arthropod on Earth. We're talking about a crab with legs wider than a Volkswagen Beetle. But here is the really fascinating part. Every single arthropod on Earth has an open circulatory system. That means their blood just kind of sloshes around inside the body. On land, this is a terribly inefficient way to deliver oxygen, and it puts a hard physical limit on how big insects can get. So how on earth does this crab manage to grow to 4 meters across?
Well, the answer lies in cold water physics. The cold, deep ocean entirely solves the spider crab's design flaw. You see, water at 10 degrees Celsius dissolves roughly 40% more oxygen than warm surface water. At the same time, the extreme cold dramatically slows down the cellular metabolism of the crab's entire body, meaning it just needs way less oxygen to survive in the first place. So the deep sea drops the demand for oxygen while almost magically increasing the supply. A body size that would literally slowly suffocate in the tropics can breathe totally comfortably in the deep.
And you know, speaking of thriving in the deep, we have to talk about the Goblin Shark's energy budget. Because at 1,000 meters down, actually chasing prey burns way more calories than a meal could ever replace.
So this 6-meter, soft-bodied, half-blind shark just eliminates the hunt entirely. It just hangs there, suspended and completely motionless in the pitch black. It uses its snout to detect the faint little electrical twitches of prey muscles, and then boom, it fires its preloaded elastic ligament jaws forward in under 0.25 seconds. It survives not by being fast or super strong, but by mastering absolute perfect energy efficiency.
Now, as we plunge even deeper, we slam into a pretty terrifying physical reality. 620 kilograms. That is the crushing pressure bearing down on every single square centimeter of space at 6,000 meters deep. To put that into perspective, it's a force strong enough to completely implode a modern submersible faster than the human brain can even process the sound.
So seriously, how does anything survive that kind of squeeze? Well, the answer lies in the absolutely brilliant strategy of Stygiomedusa gigantea, the giant phantom jelly. This totally brainless creature trails arms the length of a London bus through the pitch black, and it survives that bone-crushing pressure by simply having nothing inside it to crush. Think about it. It has no air pockets to collapse and no rigid skeleton to snap or buckle. Its body is roughly 95% incompressible water, so the pressure inside just instantly equalizes with the pressure outside. It's kind of genius.
Let's pull all these deep-sea survival rules together and look at an absolute masterclass. The oarfish. This beautiful silver blade-fin giant can grow to over 10 meters long. It filter feeds on tiny krill just to maximize every incredibly scarce calorie. And like our giant amphipod earlier, it lacks a programmed genetic ceiling, so it just keeps growing. And amazingly, it uses autonomy, which means it can deliberately amputate its own tail to shed expendable mass while protecting its vital organs. It has basically taken every hostile condition of the deep sea, the cold, the pressure, the darkness, the lack of food, and turned them all into one massive growth advantage. Okay, so up to now, these giants have all made a strange kind of logical sense. But what happens when we run into an animal that just completely breaks every single rule we've just talked about? In 2025, a remotely operated vehicle finally captured living footage of the colossal squid. We are talking about a beast with eyes literally the size of basketballs, and a donut-shaped brain that its food pipe actually runs directly through. But you want to know the craziest part? By studying the daily growth rings in their tiny little balance organs, scientists realized this creature grows to 500 kilograms in just 1 to 2 years. I mean, how on earth is an explosive growth rate like that even remotely possible in a freezing, starved environment? Well, scientists believe the secret sauce here is RNA editing. Think of DNA like a master recipe book that's permanently locked in a vault. Normally, a cell just makes an exact copy of a recipe, that's called messenger RNA, to build proteins. But cephalopods? They dynamically rewrite those instructions in real time in response to their environment. They can actively change the proteins they build based on the freezing cold or the crushing pressure they're facing right in that exact moment. To really grasp the sheer scale of this biological trick, consider this. In humans, less than 1% of our brain's genetic constructions are rewritten before a cell actually acts on them. But in cephalopods, over 60% of their genetic instructions are actively rewritten. They're essentially running on a completely different, highly adaptable biological operating system compared to us. It's this real-time cellular hacking that likely allows the colossal squid to grow to half a ton in roughly the time it takes a human toddler to just learn how to walk.
So what does all of this mean? Why does this matter to you and me? Because these deep-sea survival blueprints are exactly what human medicine desperately needs right now. The RNA editing of cephalopods is actually inspiring research into correcting the corrupted signals that cause tumor growth in humans. A deep-sea bacteria called Salinispora has given us marizomib, which is a compound capable of crossing the incredibly tricky blood-brain barrier. And the giant isopod's crazy ability to suppress its metabolism, that is directly laying the groundwork for organ preservation and even long-duration space travel.
Out on the medical frontier, the real-world impact of this is literally already happening. Because these deep-sea organisms evolved to so fiercely resist cellular damage and aging, their biology is an absolute goldmine for us. Right now, as we speak, 12 marine-derived compounds already have full FDA approval for treating human cancers, and 34 more compounds are actively sitting in clinical trials. That deep-sea drug marizomib we just mentioned, it is currently in the final stages of trials to fight glioblastoma, which is one of the most notoriously untreatable brain cancers known to medicine.
I really want to leave you with this incredibly powerful perspective. We came looking for monsters in the dark, but what we found were biological breakthroughs. For centuries, humanity feared the abyss and those legendary leviathans that would occasionally wash up on our shores. But as we finally shine a light into the midnight zone, we're realizing that these terrifying creatures aren't monsters at all. They are biological pioneers.
and their ancient, totally rule-breaking DNA might hold the exact secrets we need to save human lives.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. We've explored less than 5% of the world's oceans. So if this freezing, crushing, completely unexplored darkness already holds the keys to fighting our deadliest diseases, what other unbelievable medical marvels are still hiding down there in the dark, just waiting to be discovered? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely stay curious.